There comes a moment when you realize this is no longer just manipulation, no longer insecurity, no longer ego, because what you are witnessing now feels cold, deliberate, and dangerous. Today, we are talking about the 3 terrifying signs that a narcissist has crossed a line into something much darker, and why recognizing this shift can save your sanity, your safety, and your future. If you have ever felt confused thinking, this feels evil, but no one else sees it, stay with me. Because what you are experiencing has a pattern, and naming it is the first step to breaking free. When cruelty becomes intentional rather than impulsive, everything about the dynamic changes in a way that feels chilling. At earlier stages, harmful behavior may look reactive, driven by insecurity, shame, or emotional dysregulation. There may be explosions, insults said in the heat of the moment, or behavior followed by excuses and denial. But when narcissism turns darker, the emotional chaos settles into something far more calculated. The person is no longer lashing out because they feel threatened in the moment. They are observing, collecting data, and waiting. They notice what makes you anxious, what triggers your fear, what memories still hurt, and what you care about most. Over time, you may realize that their attacks are strangely precise. They bring up sensitive topics at moments when you are most vulnerable. They withhold support exactly when you need it. They provoke reactions in you and then step back to watch the fallout. This is not accidental. This is not poor emotional control. This is strategy. Your emotional responses become proof of their power, and your distress becomes confirmation that they still matter. The frightening part is the emotional flatness that accompanies this behavior. There is no urgency, no panic, no visible rage. There is calm, there is patience, there is intention. This shift often leaves victims deeply confused because it does not match the stereotype of emotional abuse as chaotic or explosive. Instead, it feels quiet, cold, and deeply personal. You may find yourself thinking that what hurts most is not what they say, but when and how they say it. That timing reveals awareness. Awareness reveals choice, and choice reveals responsibility. When harm is delivered thoughtfully, repeatedly, and without remorse, it signals a move away from emotional immaturity and toward deliberate psychological harm, where control replaces connection and suffering becomes part of the plan. When a narcissist begins to erase your humanity, the relationship enters a deeply disturbing phase. At earlier stages, you may have felt dismissed, minimized, or misunderstood, but there was still a sense that you existed as a person in their world. When this shift happens, that recognition disappears. You are no longer seen as someone with feelings, limits, or inner experiences. Instead, you become a role they assign meaning to, something that exists only in relation to their needs. Your emotions stop mattering unless they can be used for control. This is often when victims notice a chilling indifference to their pain. You may express hurt clearly, calmly, even desperately, and be met with boredom, irritation, or subtle amusement. There is no curiosity, no concern, no pause. What is terrifying is not just the lack of empathy, but the replacement of empathy with contempt. Your vulnerability is no longer inconvenient, it is annoying or ridiculous in their eyes. They may mock it, ignore it, or twist it into proof that you are weak, unstable, or deserving of mistreatment. As this deepens, your needs begin to feel like violations to them. Requests for respect are framed as attacks. Boundaries are treated as betrayals. Your very existence as a separate human being becomes intolerable because it interferes with their sense of dominance. This is where dehumanization fully takes hold. When someone no longer perceives you as fully human, moral restraints fade, justifications appear, they tell themselves stories that make harm acceptable, even necessary. For the person on the receiving end, this creates profound psychological damage. You may start to question whether you are asking for too much, feeling too much, or even deserving of care at all. The danger lies in how quietly this happens. There is no dramatic declaration, just a gradual stripping away of dignity, where being unseen becomes the norm and being hurt becomes expected. When destruction becomes the goal, the dynamic shifts from conflict to something far more dangerous. At this stage, it is no longer about proving superiority, maintaining an image, or winning an argument. The focus turns toward undoing you. You may sense that nothing you do brings resolution because resolution is not what they want. Peace would mean an end to control. Instead, chaos becomes the environment in which they thrive. Your stability, confidence, and sense of reality are perceived as threats that must be dismantled. This is often when behavior escalates in ways that feel coordinated. Relationships around you begin to fracture. People misunderstand you. Your reputation may subtly erode through insinuations, half-truths, or strategic victim narratives. You may notice sudden obstacles in your work, finances, or support systems that seem too coincidental to ignore. What makes this terrifying is the deniability. Each act on its own may appear small or explainable, but together they form a pattern of sabotage designed to isolate you and weaken your ability to resist. Emotionally, you may feel hunted rather than argued with. There is a sense that your reactions are being anticipated, even engineered. They may provoke you into emotional responses and then use those responses as evidence against you. Your distress becomes a tool to discredit you, and your attempts to defend yourself are reframed as instability. This creates a trap where silence feels like defeat and speaking up feels dangerous. In this phase, the narcissist's identity becomes tied to your diminishment. Your healing threatens their narrative. Your independence threatens their power. Your clarity threatens their control. That is why the attacks persist even when there is nothing left to gain externally. The damage itself becomes the reward, and the longer this goes unrecognized, the more deeply it can fracture your sense of safety, identity, and trust in your own perceptions. At this stage, confusion becomes one of the most damaging weapons used against you. You may find yourself replaying conversations, questioning your memory, and wondering how situations escalated so quickly and so severely. What once felt like disagreement now feels like psychological warfare. This is where reality itself starts to feel unstable. Facts are denied with confidence. Your experiences are rewritten in real time. You are told events never happened or happened in completely different ways, and over time, this constant distortion wears down your trust in your own mind. What makes this especially dangerous is the consistency with which the narrative is flipped. You are portrayed as the aggressor, the problem, the unstable one. Their harmful actions are reframed as reactions to your supposed behavior. Even clear evidence may be dismissed or twisted. This is not about misunderstanding. It is about control over the story. When someone controls the narrative, they control how others see you and how you see yourself. Your self-doubt becomes their shield. As this continues, you may notice a growing sense of paralysis. Making decisions feels overwhelming. Speaking up feels risky. Staying silent feels suffocating. This is intentional. When someone wants to dominate psychologically, Keeping you off balance is more effective than outright threats. You begin to anticipate their reactions, adjust your behavior, and shrink your needs in an attempt to avoid harm. Slowly, without realizing it, your world gets smaller. The cruelty of this phase lies in how invisible it can be from the outside. Others may see a calm person, a convincing story, even a charming facade. Meanwhile, you are unraveling internally, carrying stress, fear, and exhaustion that has no clear outlet. The danger is not just emotional pain, but the erosion of your inner compass. When you stop trusting your perceptions, you become easier to control. This is why recognizing this pattern matters. The goal is not to win an argument or prove the truth to someone committed to distortion. The goal becomes reclaiming your reality. Grounding yourself in facts, documentation, and safe perspectives is not paranoia. It is protection. Your clarity is not cruelty. It is your way back to yourself. Fear becomes the atmosphere you are forced to live in, even when no direct threats are spoken. You may notice your body reacting before your mind does, a tight chest, shallow breathing, constant vigilance. This happens because unpredictability has replaced safety. The narcissist's behavior feels erratic on the surface, but underneath it follows a pattern designed to keep you anxious and compliant. Calm moments are followed by sudden punishment. Kindness is withdrawn without explanation. Silence is used as pressure. Your nervous system never gets to rest. Over time, this creates a state of learned anticipation. You start scanning for signs of danger, changes in tone, facial expressions, pauses, or delays in responses. You adjust yourself constantly, trying to prevent the next emotional hit. This is not weakness. This is survival. When someone conditions you to associate peace with impending harm, your body stays alert as protection. Unfortunately, that alertness slowly drains your sense of self. What makes this especially harmful is that the fear is often denied or minimized. If you express how unsafe you feel, you may be told you are dramatic, sensitive, or imagining things. But fear does not require explicit violence to be valid. Psychological intimidation works by suggestion, implication, and repetition. The message becomes clear without being spoken. You learn that there are consequences for upsetting them, disagreeing, or asserting independence. As this continues, your choices narrow. You stop doing things you once enjoyed. You hesitate before speaking. You avoid attention. Life becomes about avoiding harm rather than pursuing meaning. The narcissist benefits from this because fear creates control without constant effort. You regulate yourself for them. Your silence, compliance, and self-suppression become proof that the system is working. The danger here is not just emotional exhaustion. Chronic fear alters how you think, how you trust, and how you relate to the world. It disconnects you from intuition and replaces it with anxiety. Recognizing that this fear was conditioned, not inherent, is a critical step toward reclaiming autonomy and restoring a sense of internal safety. Control begins to replace emotion in a way that feels unsettling because the reactions no longer match the situation. What once looked like explosive anger or impulsive outbursts now feels measured, delayed, and purposeful. You may notice that rage is no longer immediate. It arrives later, at a moment when you are least prepared, most exposed, or most dependent. This delay is not restraint, it is calculation. The goal is no longer to express anger, but to use it as leverage. This is often when punishment becomes indirect. Instead of shouting or confrontation, they may withdraw affection, resources, communication, or cooperation. They may suddenly become cold, distant, or unreachable. Important things are withheld. Support disappears. Promises are quietly broken. When you ask what is wrong, you receive vague answers or denial. This keeps you guessing and searching for the mistake you may have made. The uncertainty itself becomes the punishment. What makes this especially damaging is the way cause and effect are blurred. You are punished without explanation, then blamed for reacting to the punishment. Your distress is framed as proof that you are unstable or difficult. This creates a loop where you are constantly trying to repair something that was never clearly defined. The narcissist retains power by never naming the rules while enforcing consequences when those invisible rules are broken. Over time, this trains compliance. You learn that asserting yourself leads to loss, distance, or retaliation. You stop bringing up concerns. You stop asking questions. You begin to self-censor. This is not because you agree with them, but because the cost of resistance feels too high. Control has been achieved without visible force. The danger of this phase lies in how normalized it can become. You may start to believe that relationships are supposed to feel tense, conditional, or unsafe. You may blame yourself for the silence or withdrawal, assuming you deserve it. Recognizing that this is not emotional maturity or calmness, but strategic control is essential. Rage that is delayed, denied, and deployed for dominance is not healing. It is a warning sign that power has replaced connection. At this point, isolation often tightens around you in ways that are subtle enough to escape notice at first. You may find that your connections begin to weaken, not because you chose distance, but because distance was engineered. Conversations with friends or family are discouraged, criticized, or made to feel unsafe. You may be told others cannot be trusted, that they misunderstand you, or that they secretly judge you. Sometimes the narcissist presents themselves as the only one who truly knows you, positioning themselves as both protector and gatekeeper. Gradually, you may start pulling back from people who once grounded you. It feels easier than dealing with the tension or backlash that follows outside contact. You may also feel embarrassed, unsure how to explain what you are experiencing, or afraid that no one will believe you. This silence benefits the narcissist. Without witnesses, their version of reality faces less resistance. Without support, your dependence increases. Isolation does not have to be absolute to be effective. Even emotional distance from others can be enough to weaken your sense of stability. What makes this especially dangerous is that isolation is often framed as care or concern. They may claim they are protecting you from negative influences, stress, or drama. They may subtly undermine people who challenge their behavior while praising those who stay quiet. Over time, your world shrinks. Your perspective narrows. The absence of outside feedback makes it harder to reality check your experiences. Internally, this can lead to profound loneliness and self-doubt. Humans regulate emotions through connection. When that connection is cut off, distress intensifies. You may start believing you are difficult to love, or that maintaining relationships always leads to conflict. The narcissist's presence fills the gap left by others, reinforcing their control. The danger here is not just social loss. Isolation erodes resilience. It removes the mirrors that reflect who you are beyond the abuse. Recognizing that separation from support was not a natural drift but a manufactured outcome is a powerful step toward reclaiming connection, perspective, and a sense of belonging that exists outside of fear and control. Eventually, the most damaging shift happens internally when you begin to disappear from your own life. This is not because you are weak or unaware, but because prolonged exposure to control, fear, and distortion slowly reshapes how you see yourself. You may notice that your preferences fade. Decisions feel heavy. Your voice softens or goes silent. You stop recognizing the person you used to be, not in dramatic ways, but in small daily moments where you choose safety over authenticity again and again. This internal collapse is often misunderstood as depression, confusion, or loss of confidence, but it is more accurately a survival response. When every expression of self has been met with punishment, dismissal, or ridicule, the mind learns to conserve energy by minimizing exposure. You think less, feel less, want less. This numbness can feel like relief at first because it reduces conflict, but over time it becomes emptiness. The narcissist benefits from this because a person who is disconnected from themselves is easier to influence, redirect, and manage. What makes this especially tragic is that the loss of self is rarely acknowledged as harm. From the outside, you may appear calmer, quieter, more agreeable. Internally, you may feel hollow, detached, or unreal. Joy feels distant, motivation fades. You may struggle to imagine a future that feels meaningful because your inner compass has been suppressed for so long. This is not a failure of resilience. It is the cost of prolonged psychological threat. In this phase, the narcissist does not need to actively attack. The system is already in place. You anticipate disapproval. You edit yourself before speaking. You abandon needs before they are expressed. Control has been internalized. The most dangerous part is that you may start believing this diminished version of yourself is who you truly are. Recognizing this state is not about blame. It is about awareness. The self that feels lost was not destroyed. It was hidden for protection. With safety, support, and distance from harm, that self can reemerge because identity does not vanish under pressure. It waits for conditions where it no longer has to hide. In the end, recognizing these terrifying signs, the calculated cruelty, the erasure of your humanity, the pursuit of destruction, the distortion of reality, the constant fear, the strategic control, the enforced isolation, and the slow disappearance of self is not meant to instill fear, but clarity. Understanding these patterns gives you the power to protect yourself, reclaim your boundaries, and restore your sense of identity. The moment you name what is happening, you take the first step away from their control. Walking away, setting firm boundaries, seeking support, and trusting your own perceptions are not acts of weakness. They are acts of survival and strength. Evil thrives in silence, confusion, and compliance, but when you see it clearly, you reclaim your power, your reality, and your life. No one has the right to diminish you, manipulate you, or erase who you are. The truth is your armor, awareness is your guide, and your freedom begins the moment you choose yourself over their darkness.